Today, I want to talk about the power of a back catalog, not just for indie record labels, primarily for indie record labels, but also if you're an independent artist, your back catalog of your repertoire in your previous releases is important too. But first, we need to define what a back catalog is. I think a back catalog is essential to the long-term sustainability of your record label or as your career as an independent artist. A back catalog often is just referred to as older music that has previously been released. In fact, it's become a bit of a hot topic recently as older musicians like Neil Young and Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen are selling their back catalog and their publishing rights. They're kind of cashing out because investors and major labels know that this music can be listened to for future generations. It can be used on future movie and TV syncs. So there's a lot of money in people's back catalogs, and we're going to talk about that in a second. The average person would refer to back catalog as old music or classic albums, but there's actually a technical time frame in the music industry, and that's anything older than 18 months is considered catalog music. That actually dates back to the 90s when people were repurchasing their albums that they previously owned on tape and on vinyl onto CD. And it was actually messing with billboards because it was impeding with the new releases a little bit because people were rebuying these old classics 80s albums and it was messing with the charts. Now, I don't know if that's still true because as I record this, we're close to Christmas time and I just checked the charts. On the album chart, number 10 is Michael Bublé's Christmas, which I think is like almost 10 years old now at this point. And in the top 10 of the Hot 200 on Billboard, or the Hot 100 on Billboard, sorry, for singles, is number 4 is Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas. And then even Brenda Lee's Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree is number 5. So I think they've kind of gotten rid of that. But the music industry defines catalog music as anything older than 18 months. By the way, we're going to go a little in depth today, a little didactic. And so if you want the notes from today's episode, go to otherrecordlabels.com/back catalog. That's otherrecordlabels.com/back catalog. So as I talk about these big Christmas songs and like what major labels and investors care about older music, that's kind of irrelevant to us in this community of indie record labels and small artists. But there is power in your back catalog. And I have 5 reasons why a back catalog for a record label is important. Why you should build it up, why you should nurture it, why you should celebrate it, and stop underestimating its power. Number 1 is that your back catalog actually says more about your future than it says about your past. I think that your back catalog represents your future catalog. Meaning it's because we've released these things in the past that enables us to do future things. In fact, every release, especially if you're an independent artist, every release is like a stepping stone leading to the next one. If you look at, for example, Beethoven's third symphony was his most critically acclaimed, but his most popular one was his 5th symphony. And we actually kind of think, when we think about that, we realize, oh, well, what about the 4th? Not a lot of people talk about the 4th. And actually, the 9th is also very popular, but what about 6, 7, 8? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like we realize that in order to have the 5th symphony, which is that boom, 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 like you need to have the ones that come before it. And the same thing is when it comes to our releases. Every release from last year is a step towards what we're doing this year. And every release we're doing this year is a step towards what you're doing next year. So it's important just to realize, and this also can encourage you whenever you're thinking, wow, that release wasn't successful. Well, maybe that's your 4th symphony, and maybe your next release will be your 5th symphony. Symphony is a hard word to say, especially if you're talking fast. Number 2 is this concept of the long tail. The concept of the long tail is this statistical phenomenon that basically means that there's this theory that like, okay, so you have like what would be considered like the head, right? And that would be like on a graph. And let me see if I can throw up a graph here. So the top of the head would be when something is initially released, a big burst of excitement. But then as things kind of level out, you have these extremely low sales. But when you have extremely low sales for a long period of time, or for some products, it's an indefinite period of time, that long tail can actually make up more quantity than that initial extremely high burst. So let's use an example here, okay? So let's say that a record from the 80s comes out and sells 1 million copies. And that's a ton. That's huge. That would be the head of the graph. Now, let's say for the past 40 years, that album has sold 25,000 copies a year. So what that means then is that the long tail, even though they're only selling 25,000 copies, which is like nothing compared to that initial burst of selling 1 million copies in its first year, selling 25,000 copies for the next 40 years also equals 1 million. So we see that this long tail, and then assuming that a record like Thriller might sell for another 40 years from now, we realize that the value is actually in this long tail. Now, those numbers are crazy. Of course, we're not doing numbers like that. But let me show you another way the math can work. Let's say you have this audacious goal of having a new single hit 100,000 streams on Spotify each month. Now, that's insane, but I'm just using this for easy math. 100,000 streams, I mean, even just achieving 100,000 streams overall is really difficult to do. But let's say we're trying to achieve 100,000 streams a month for a single. That's like nearly impossible for any of us to achieve. However, let's ask this question. What if we were trying to get 100 streams for a song in a month, 100 streams a song for a month? Is that possible? Of course, that's totally doable. That's like 2 or 3 a day. That's not really a big deal. In fact, you could just leave your song playing overnight. So having 100 songs a month, having one song get 100 plays a month is not a big deal. And so if we have a back catalog of 1,000 songs, that's like 10 years of releasing like 10 records a year. If we have a back catalog of 1,000 songs and each one of those songs is getting 100 streams per month, that's 100,000 streams a month. So again, this is the same concept of the long tail. Is all of a sudden that math becomes a lot more achievable. As a record label, we can be like, oh, we'll just stick with this for a couple of years. We build up this back catalog. And now we're starting to see 5,000 streams a month, 50,000 streams a month, eventually 500,000 streams a month. That can really sustain you as a record label. Number 3 reason why your back catalog is so powerful is that multiple opportunities lead to multiple chances for success. This is self-explanatory. It's one of the reasons why I encourage artists and record labels alike to be prolific, meaning write a lot, release a lot, record a lot, just do a lot of things, because you never know what is going to register with the audience, what people are going to get excited about. And the same is true for your back catalog, that your back catalog being robust and big can serve you down the road in a lot of unexpected ways. So let's give a couple examples. Okay, so sync licensing, we did a big, huge series on sync licensing not too long ago. So on sync licensing, for example, I got a call from a music supervisor this summer who was looking for a song that talked about hot dogs. It was a happy-go-lucky song about life, and it needed to reference hot dogs in it. I did not have a song that referenced hot dogs in the lyrics. I'm kind of proud of that fact, but this music supervisor was looking for a song that had a lyric that contained the word hot dogs or talked about loving hot dogs. Obviously, it was for a hot dogs company, but having a robust back catalog, now that's a super specific example, but I also get calls for people saying, we just need something about being happy to be alive, specifically those words. When you have 100 songs or even 1,000 songs in your back catalog, if you know those songs well, if they're organized well, and you get a call for something specific, you can be like, actually, I do just so happen to have a folk song sung by a woman that mentions the lyrics, I'm happy to be alive. And so sync is a great reason why you should have a big back catalog. There's random discoveries. I had there was this major label artist who picked one of my songs to put on just their own personal playlist. This is someone with like 3 million listeners, like a huge social media following. I got like tons of plays from it. I don't know why she picked me. And I don't know where it came from. I don't know how she discovered me, but this song was actually 8 years old. And so here's a song that's come and gone, and you may have thought it's not that important. And all of us are really focused on what's new. But then all of a sudden, someone just says, I like this song, and they put it on a playlist. It gets a bunch of plays. So it's a big deal. Another final example, then we'll move on to the next point. My friends are in this band called Elevator. Great band. You should check them out. Spelt with 2 L's instead of just one. And they recorded a cover of Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill a couple years ago, like a long time ago. And it was a great cover. It did just the normal amount, of popularity. And then, of course, when that song, the official song was placed on a Stranger Things episode, everybody, that kind of like all waters raised all boats. I always get that mixed up. But anyway, all of a sudden, everybody was interested in that song, and they went looking for other versions of that song. And then my friend's band, that version came back into the limelight, and I think it did great things for them because they had that from many years ago. That's all the power of a back catalog. Unexpected things can happen. Another thing too is anniversary issues as well. I mean, these are just really cool opportunities that you can start to promote a record that's now 10 years old and do a reissue or repressing or a special edition, or a record that's 5 years old or 25 years old. You get the point. Number 4, when an artist blows up. We had a few labels on this podcast over the years who have had artists who have graduated, so to speak, meaning they sign them to their first or 1 or 2 albums, and then a bigger label, maybe not even necessarily a major label, but just a big label picks them up and signs them. What ends up happening then, if you have the rights to their first couple of releases, or if the artist is still licensing you those albums, then you can then make money off of their newfound popularity. And sometimes this happens actually on TikTok. I know 2 artists who have older songs that have kind of come and gone, did sort of well, and now they're being used as a trending sound on TikTok, and they're getting a ton of plays from that. And of course, there's pros and cons to that, but it's indirectly kind of blowing up their older catalog. Not blowing up, but I mean, if that one song's blowing up, then you're going to get an increase of 10 or 20% of all of your other albums. And so I know a couple labels that we've had on the show who have some really, really big artists who've gone on to do really amazing things, and they have the rights to their first 2 or 3 records. And that can be some pretty substantial revenue for those labels. And number 5, finally, is this current state of streaming. One of the biggest arguments for a healthy and sizable back catalog is how streaming has changed the revenue models for record labels. Today, music is rented. For better or for worse, I'm not here to defend that, but the fact of the matter is this is why investors are buying up music from Bob Dylan or future from Mariah Carey, because nobody owns these songs. Nobody is making a one-time purchase for songs anymore. I mean, it still happens on Bandcamp, of course, and I think iTunes is still operating that way. But the majority of people are renting All I Want for Christmas from Mariah Carey and playing it 10,000 times in the month of December. I had this realization just before the ubiquity of streaming when I was driving in my car and I was listening to the CD Kid A from the band Radiohead. And this is a record I distinctly remember buying from HMV in October of 2000. I bought it for $20. Around 2016, 2017, when streaming became ubiquitous, I was driving in my car thinking about streaming, and I was listening to the CD, the actual CD I bought 20 years prior. Well, at that time, it was 16 or 17 years prior. And I realized I paid $20 for this CD. Radiohead and their major label only got $20 from me, and I've been spinning it for 20 years. I've imported it into my iTunes and copied it onto my iPhone and my iPod years previous. And I've been listening to this one album. I've got my money's worth for $20. But nowadays it's different, right? If we listen to an album 10 or 20 or 30,000 times in our lifetime, we're paying for that, a small amount, but we're now renting that. So there's a little bit more money coming into the music industry because people are renting music. And so the way that we can benefit from that as record labels is the fact that we can see streaming revenue for our back catalog. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier about that simple math. We can now see that maybe 20%, maybe 50% of our monthly revenue can come from our back catalog. I've got 2 takeaways for you. What does all this mean for you as an independent record label or as an independent artist? Number 1 is the power of staying consistent and persistent. I think that everybody who's a creative should be prolific. I think you should keep releasing things. Keep releasing your 3rd symphony and your 15th symphony. Who knows what's going to happen after that? So it's important to you to just keep with it. If that's releasing a record once a month as a record label, which is completely ambitious, if that's releasing a record once a year, just stick to your schedule that you're comfortable with, and you will eventually build a back catalog. And then your second call to action is focus on your back catalog just as much as you focus on your future catalog. Human beings love new things. We love novel things. We get really excited about what's coming, and we're easy to abandon old things. But it's important that you as a record label, very important, and I've given you 5 reasons why, that you focus on your back catalog just as much as your future catalog. Now, if you don't believe me, okay, maybe print off a spreadsheet of their past 12 months sales and calculate how much of it came from new releases and how much of it came from previous releases. And if it's 50-50, then you should be spending your time promoting your back catalog just as much as you're promoting your future catalog or your existing catalog. your back catalog is only accounting for 25%, then 75% of your promotional efforts and all of your energy should be put towards your new releases and only 25% to your back catalog. You get the math. So those are your two call to actions. Is one is to stay consistent and persistent as a record label and as an artist, and two, to focus on your back catalog to the percentage that your back catalog brings you revenue. But I think these 5 arguments show as you build up your back catalog and your new releases inevitably become your back catalog, you'll start to see your back catalog taking up a bigger piece of that revenue pie for you. We got super detailed today. If you want the notes from today and to kind of go back over everything and to meditate on this subject, because I think it's a really powerful subject, go to otherrecordlabels.com/back catalog. Please subscribe, and thanks for watching.